Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. Today, here, we're going to talk about the offense, such as it was from that Tennessee game. Not a bad offensive game, but not the result we wanted, obviously. And to join us here is Acie Slade, otherwise known as Big Play Receiver. How you doing, Acie?
Pretty good, Ken. Good to be with you. How you doing?
Uh, Doing great, as well as we can be, given all the news that's come out about the Ravens, the last couple of
Yeah,
losses, all those things. COVID rumors obviously swirling at the castle right now. We don't really know the extent of it right now as we record on Tuesday night. It could be a lot worse by the
right,
midday tomorrow.
right. Sure could. Sure could.
Okay, well let's talk about some of these things. And I think the first question I have for you, AC, is what is it that the Ravens can take as a positive from this game offensively?
That J.K. Dobbins, I like to use his full name sometimes, Jacqueline Dobbins, is the back that they hoped they got when they drafted him in the second round. I know a lot of folks wanted a receiver at that point. I think we were at, or the board was at wide receiver 13,
Hmm.
I believe. So you're taking wide receiver 13 at that slot.
Might have been
If
Denzel Mims, right? He
Yeah,
was still
Denzel
available.
Mims, yeah, went the pick before. And but J.K. Dobbins is a good back.
Hmm.
His balance, his quickness, his contact strength, breaking tackles. He hits the edge in a blur when he has that straight line shot. Um, we haven't seen a lot of them out of the backfield. I thought we'd see more to date, to
Hmm.
be honest. We're seeing kind of like the check down,
Hmm.
targets. I figured we'd see something a little bit further downfield. But I think he's terrific, and I think they realize that he's terrific, and that is the not the lone bright spot, but certainly the brightest bright
Yeah,
spot from this game.
yeah. I thought there were others, I'm really happy with J.K. Dobbins. And the other thing I'm happy with him is a blocker that you didn't mention.
Yes.
He's been a good
Hmm.
pass blocker
Yes.
frequently, and he made a great block on Bryant's play.
Hmm.
In fact, he made the play for Bryant with that block more than
You're
more
right
than
on the
Dez
on the
did.
perimeter. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, when it happened, I kind of said, "Oh man,"
that's a great block.
Yeah, that was really nice to see. He did have one whiff, and you may have seen it differently. That kind of caused some trouble.
On the
But
sack.
yeah, on the sack in
Mhm.
overtime, the first series.
Yeah. So
So yeah, yeah, and I just think he just wasn't looking. He was looking at the A gaps, and that backer, came more from the sea. And by the time he realized it, he was essentially on his shoulder, and
hmm
he couldn't recover.
yeah, he was one of three who I traded that sack to. But before we get into the offensive line play, I've got to do a little reader here for my bookie. Friend of the show here. Thanksgiving's all about traditions like turducken with mashed potatoes and betting on football with MyBookie's Turkey Day free play. MyBookie's third annual Turkey Day free play returns Thanksgiving Thursday. Your chance to bet up to $250 risk-free on the early Thanksgiving game. The Turkey Day free play is a no-risk, all-gravy wager on the full game spread. Pick the right team and you win. If your team's upset, your bet, up to $250, is refunded before the next afternoon game. New players will get their first deposit matched halfway, up to $1,000, to help add even more juice to the greatest football weekend of the year. Now, use that for that. You use the code RAVENS, RAVENS. I hope you know how to spell Ravens. If you don't, you might be too low for that bar. Otherwise, claim your bonus on the free bet. Definitely a very substantial bonus relative to other gambling sites out there. The best part is that's only the beginning. My bookie has promotions all holiday weekend, and you'll be eligible for them as well. That's why at my bookie they call football season winning season. Check it out now. No risk, all gravy, baby. Don't forget to use the promo code Ravens to claim your freebies. All right, AC, we're going to go on and talk a little bit about the offensive line now. That good with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I'm going to go through the overall first as I usually do. The Ravens had 63 scored snaps on offense. They allowed 4 penalties on the offensive line. That's pretty serious for a game. A couple of false starts, both of them were pretty significant.
Hmm.
An offensive hold and a clipping. Those two were less significant, but those false starts, each of them, one took a 3rd and 1 to 3rd and 5, and another came on a snap that was very significant near the goal line that set up a 1st and 15
Right.
when that
Right.
snap was early. So kind of a bummer. The offensive line only got 2/3 of one sack charged to them. No other quarterback hits in this game. 4 pressures, very low total for 30 dropbacks, or a low total for 30 dropbacks. I won't say a very low total. They gave Jackson ample time and space on 13 of 30 plays, 43%. It's a high total for today's game. And the run blocking included just one penetration, one run for a loss. It was actually charged to McCary in the game.
Mhm. Do you think I didn't take a chance or take a look at your scores, your grades from the playoff game. Was this a better performance than that game for the
Oh
O
yeah,
line?
oh yeah. The offensive line.
Significantly.
You know it's different for grades and whatnot. I mean,
Hmm.
they had some grading issues this game because of the penalties.
Hmm.
On that game, they had it more. They were giving up some pressure events. They had some failed high leverage plays, including a 4th and 1 very tentative pull out of Bozeman, which
Mm,
it's only one block missed, but
right.
it's equivalent of like missing 10
Yeah,
blocks.
the impact. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yep.
So
I was pretty happy with Holden, and it's like we needed Holden to hold the line, right? And
yeah.
and I think he held the line, held his own, maybe it's better said, pretty well, for what could be expected. He's kind of a journeyman, what have you, and
Oh yeah.
kind of thrust in, to a contending team versus a defensive front that's packed some punch to it, and he certainly held his own. So that was good to see.
Well, let's get to the individual scoring. We'll get to Will Holden because I think his performance was one of the bright spots, as you mentioned. Start with Orlando Brown. He came back from a fairly mediocre game against the Pats. He only allowed 1.5 pressures. He probably had the most difficult assignment with Harold Landry opposite him. It was, I think, the toughest on the line. He had 3 out of 5 pulls in the game. Ravens running a lot of counter in this with 2-man left to right pulls. I'm
Hmm.
sure you probably noticed that.
Hmm.
He continues to have trouble making backside contributions to the run, which is one of the few real flaws in his game. Stanley, a lot more athletic, able to
Right.
get out into level 2 and make blocks, but Orlando otherwise pretty exceptional at left tackle since he's been there.
Yeah, he just struggles to get there, right? Backside to get to level 2. He's just not the fastest, guy out there. He's pretty heavy footed. Obviously, if he gets his mitts on you, you're pretty much done. And if he locks you up, he'll try to sit on you or lay on you as well. But I think he's filled in quite admirably, to the left tackle spot, and I, I can't imagine that the staff is remotely disappointed at all with what he's done. I mean, they got to be pretty happy. I mean, he's not the All Pro that Stanley was. Uh, prior to, but he's done really good work.
So moving on to Bradley Bozeman, he had a solid game. He wasn't without warts. Party to 3 pressures, and I do partial events. You may have heard me soapbox about this before, but
Yeah.
1 plus a half plus a quarter for a total of 1.75, a third of a sack. That's some significant pressure to give up at guard. 3 missed blocks. He went 11 of 15 on pulls, and part of that was because he got a -2 for a third of a sack that effectively costs him 3 of the 4 points missed
Mm.
on pulls. So he really had a very fine game pulling again, really drives that power run game. I think that's one of the reasons they were reluctant to move him to center, which obviously was suggested in the course of things here.
Right, and I believe he played a little center in
Alabama.
college. Yeah,
Hmm.
right, right, and yeah, they have a lot of diversity in their offensive line over the years. Actually, I I tell you, I wrote him hard last year, Bozeman, and I just felt like he was reaching too much. He wasn't, bringing rolling his hips through. He wasn't bringing really his lower half through into a lot of his blocks. He was reaching a lot, but I've really been impressed with him this year. He's played a lot better. Whether he's worked on those weaknesses specifically or other things, but Yeah, I've been pretty happy with him in the lineup.
Well, he's been probably the Ravens' most consistent lineman, along with Brown, since
Hmm.
about week 7 of last year, in my opinion. He finished the year very strong.
Hmm.
Did not start the year very strong, that's
No,
for
not at
sure.
all. Not at all.
Move on to McCary at center. Kind of interesting that they decided he was the guy, but he'd done all the shotgun snapping in the 2019 camp. He did all the 7-on-7 snaps. So
Okay.
I guess he was the guy they figured could clean that up most securely, and he did have a good game with the exception of the one early snap, which I charged him that penalty, even though there were people moving all over. It was really McCary's early snap that I think was
Right.
the problem, and Jackson wasn't ready for it.
Hmm.
Otherwise, he gave up a penetration, a third of the one sack, missed 5 blocks. Without that penalty, he'd have had a C. With the penalty, he gets a D. I still think his ability to kind of clean up the play in the middle was one of the things that helped the Ravens offense stay in the game.
And I tell you, and it's the bigger story of the season so far. That early snap that you mentioned, in maybe most cases, it's not a big deal. But I tell you, the penalties, the miscues, the drops, the slight overthrows, just game by game, what we're seeing is that they just come at the worst times.
Yeah, and in a one-score game, that's always going to be true. I mean, my defensive article, I led with the 18 plays that lost the game, but it's you got 18 plays on there. If any one of them happens, you might win the game. If any
Hmm.
two of them happens, you probably do win the
Right,
game.
right,
So,
yeah, yeah,
anyway, obviously, particularly when the game's tied at the end of regulation, it's a one-play game the whole way,
sure,
pretty much.
sure.
All right, let's move on to right guard, where Powers played his first full game as a pro. In a lot of ways, it was excellent. Unfortunately, 2 penalties really marred the outing. One of them, very avoidable, was a clipping penalty in level 2. It was really after the play was done,
Hmm.
and it was a low, nasty hit. I know Powers wants to cultivate that personality, but
Right.
that's not the way to do it at the NFL level. One of the good things that has been true of Ravens linemen over the past several years is that they've typically been able to clean up holding calls, and he had one of those incredible ticky-tack hold. In fact,
Hmm.
I thought it was called on Fluker because Fluker really did hold his
Right,
man.
exactly. Yeah, I
Powers
saw that in the
barely got
replay.
it.
Right, yeah. I think the announcers called that out too. Like, wait a minute, that's no
Yeah,
hold there. That was
yeah,
Fluker.
yeah. So anyway, the man opposite Powers called for the flag, and I don't remember who that was. I think it was 98, so I'm forgetting who that was. But anyway,
Yeah.
he tossed his hands up, and they gave it to him. But anyway, either way, he got a D for the game with those 2 penalties, but he only missed 4 blocks and gave up half a pressure. So in terms of his actual blocking results, he was a lot better than that, and I think that's something to look forward to as being pretty correctable with Powers' game. And
Hmm.
it's really all that's been wrong has been 2 holding calls and a clipping call now in all of his professional play, which only totals about 2 games worth. But that's really all that he's done wrong. So I'm looking forward to what he can do after he cleans that up.
Yeah, I think I would like to know what the club truly thinks about him. It's been anticipated among I told you I interact with Michael Crawford quite a bit, Cole Jackson and others, but it's been anticipated that he would have just kind of found his way into the starting lineup by now.
Yeah, by
His
attrition, by
Yeah,
sub,
yeah, by attrition, by let's just see if this makeup will work for this game. But he I don't know what he's struggling with day to day or practice to practice. I would really like to know because he seems to be the kind of O lineman that you would want. He has that edge, he has that attitude. Um, he's got decent feet, right? He's not a
yeah, I
complete
haven't,
he's not a
not a problem.
plotter out there, you know.
No,
So
good
yeah,
power.
yeah, exactly. So it's he's an odd one to figure out.
But I think you're right. I think it's what we're not seeing in practice that's a problem. He very publicly failed at center with about 3 missed shotgun snaps when they tried him there. But given the fact that he's been apparently behind, Phillips, who's a rookie, and
Hmm.
McCary, and he's a second-year guy, so he's one of the guys the Ravens really need to find out what they have. I've liked what I've seen in these couple of games and in all the basically the time he's played, with the exception of the penalties. I'm really having a hard time to figure out why it took us so long to get here. And what we've seen a lot with young linemen is they pick up a couple of penalties in their first game. Jensen, when he first started center, had 3 in his first game, didn't have any more.
I remember that.
Yeah. We Orlando Brown had 2, I believe, in his second game and didn't have any more. And we had McCary had 2 in his first game and didn't have. I think he had 1 more. But anyway, there's been a tendency for those to get coached out pretty well by Delisandris once they occur, and they kind of learn the rules of engagement.
So you think you may be on that path with Powers?
I think if the trend holds up and the coaching improves play the way it has in the past, and I think we've got a winner in Powers because he looks otherwise the part.
I agree.
All right, let's move on to right tackle here, and the guy you mentioned earlier was Holden. He didn't actually start the game; Fluker did, but Holden saw his first NFL action since he's last played in the NFL in 2018 with the Cardinals. He's been released 8 times.
Wow!
So that's really hard to do by 7 teams, including the Ravens. The Cardinals a couple times.
Yeah.
So, they brought him up from the practice squad. They didn't even have him protected the whole year, despite the fact that in a COVID year, I would think a left tackle,
right,
is something you'd want to protect. And then he comes up and he plays like this, and they're sending him back down. He actually could have been taken yesterday. I'm mildly surprised that did not happen.
Wow. Yeah.
Because somebody could have signed him right away.
Yeah, just out of spite, right?
And he played well. What the heck? I mean, he looked mobile to me. Had 4 blocks in level 2, a couple of really nice highlight combination blocks. I was very positive on his play. The only thing he did was that very silly false start. Otherwise, he did not have a missed block, which is extremely rare at tackle, because if you run runs to the left, usually on the backside of the play, you might pick up a missed block. But terrific game.
And how many snaps did he have? I didn't take a note on that.
Scored snaps, he had 29. I believe he might have had 30 if you look at the game book, but then there's accepted penalties, and actually in his case, it's the false start that he had is not included in those 29.
Gotcha. Yeah, I tell you, that's I mean, obviously I mentioned him as a bright spot earlier. Just really pleased. It's such a surprise and a pleasant surprise when a player that expect much from comes in and he gets opportunities, whether it's because of injury, like in-game opportunities, right? So okay, he's called up, but they won't use him, so we don't have to worry about him. But all of a sudden, you see him out there on the field, and you're like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And he performs very well, or he makes a big catch, or he moves the chains a couple times, for a game-winning or a game-tying drive. You're like, oh wow, this is great. It's just really, really good to see. Is he going to play like this every game? I don't know. Maybe it's unlikely, right? Based upon his history, but who knows? Maybe this is a system, and maybe what he's being asked to do just fits with him right now.
Yeah, there are things about the offense last year where it made it a lot easier for the right tackle in particular. I thought Brown really benefited from that. He still played well at left tackle, but there's so much just of a simple down block being the first block for that right tackle, and you let the edge defender go, which really makes that whole blocking system easy. Holden, I mean, there was some of that in Holden's play, but the fact that he missed no blocks and there weren't any significant mistakes, in the game other than the false start, speaks volumes to me. And if you really look at what the Ravens have had at right tackle since Brown vacated the position, because obviously the team only had 2 tackles. We wondered if Brown could play left tackle. We thought we didn't have anybody to play right tackle, and all of a sudden, Fluker, who played terrible early in the year, came back and played well, and he's played well now 3 out of 4 games. Just one bad half of football. We'll get to Fluker next. McCary played there well for one half against New England. And now we've had Holden play well for one half too. It was like an embarrassment of riches at the position in a very minor way.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about Fluker before we move on here, because he gave up 1.5 pressures in this game. Let me make sure I'm reading from the right sheet here. Yes, he did not give up any pressures in this game. He had 5 missed blocks on 34. It worked out to be an A-, 4 level 2 blocks. Again, that's nice for a right tackle. 1 pancake, 1 out of 1 on pulls. Asking Fluker to pull, that's bold. A very a very unusually good game from Fluker, and he'd had two good games before that New England game when he really imploded and seemed to be basically holding people and grabbing people on every play. I did think he got away with a hold in this game, but I still say he played pretty well, and he got an A minus in this game on my system.
Yeah, I was watching him probably more so than anyone else. And he got away with a few holds. I would say I'm trying to go off of memory, which is always bad. I would say two or certainly two, maybe three holds he got away with, and that's fine, right? You're gonna catch some, and the refs are going to miss some as well. I just he played well early on, and I think that had to do with just new home. I'm sure the guys and the staff welcomed him with open arms. He was thrust, excuse me, into the starting position, and so I think he was kind of riding that high. But old habits set in. I think he probably was keyed on slightly as well as the season moved along, and the old Fluker kind of came out. you
Right.
know
Well, he's kind of lost two positions this year. So he lost the guard job at some point during training camp because he certainly appeared to be the physical superior to Phillips. And you
hmm
look at Phillips, I mean, he does look a pretty squared off adult body at this point. I think he still probably has some gains to make from a strength perspective. But I thought it was kind of more of an organizational choice that they decided one, Fluker was one of the real backups they had to tackle, and two is they really wanted a young guy to win the right guard job because it would pay more dividends in the future if that happened.
I think you're exactly right about ultimately putting Phillips there at right guard. Um, I think they were just high on him as well. I think this is not the first time, and it's not unique to the Ravens, but certainly is not the first time the Ravens have taken a college tackle, particularly a right tackle, and then put him inside at guard. And I think they were just, not to say that they thought he was Yonda, right? But but I think they were kind of fine with that move, and as a replacement for Yonda, a numeric replacement, obviously, not a skill replacement. They thought that you know it made sense to give him that chance,
Yep.
and yeah, poor guy just couldn't seem to do it.
All right, let's move on and talk about Lamar Jackson in this game. I did want to mention Scurry made 9 of his 9 blocks as a sixth offensive lineman. I thought really good mobility in this game as well.
Yeah, and he came in right. He in some of those red zone formations, I believe, right when he was stacked at the edge
They
at the
had him.
extra
They had him
lineman.
on first down. They did have him in the red zone for sure on
hmm
when they were close to the goal line, but they had him in all over the field,
all over
honestly,
the
as
field.
a
Okay.
sixth lineman. And it's part of like replacing what Boyle does with multiple players because there
hmm
isn't anybody who can do all of that.
No, unfortunately not.
Okay. Let's move on. Talk a little bit about Lamar Jackson now. Obviously, some mixed results on long passes. I wanted to talk a little bit about those and some individual plays in particular. And I thought we'd just go in some kind of chronological order through the game,
hmm
if that's good with you. But
Yeah,
he
absolutely.
underthrew that ball in the end zone to Andrews that was tipped by Byard late in the first quarter. Kind of a what would I call it? A max protect. They had a couple extra blockers that stayed in. Usually, by the way, what do you define max protect at? Do you say 2 extra blockers, which is kind of my definition, or do you say it has to be 3?
Two.
Yeah.
Yeah, two. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. That ball underthrown. It's a shame, in terms of not getting the ball out on time, not getting the ball there on time.
hmm
But I could live with if it was the only miss.
Yeah, and I think again, looping back to common themes, that's just what we're seeing week in and week out. Is he's just off by a little bit, just a little bit, and I don't think we realized that how much he was on by that same margin
Last year. Yeah.
last year. Yeah, I mean we were just taking it all in, right? We were enjoying every big play, every touchdown, whether red zone or go zone, and it was great. And now we're seeing that's just a little bit off, and it's it's just a mirror image.
I would like to see them do more to not roll the pocket. That play they intentionally rolled the pocket, and they got max protect going, and they had everybody over by the right sideline, obviously following Jackson in that particular case. I think he just narrows the field when he does that. He's a great pocket quarterback.
I,
Just keep him there.
yeah, no, I totally agree. And there was one where they I can't remember which series, but they were going left to right, I'm pretty sure, and it was a rollout right, and they ran stacked outs into the boundary, and it just had no chance. The play had no chance,
Hmm.
and just yeah, I'm totally with you on that. Less rollouts. If I'm okay with nakeds back the other way, but I think
Hmm.
rollouts to the flow of the play is it's just not there. Particularly too when you have everyone, and the way the Titans were playing, everyone just had their eyes on Lamar,
Right.
and so that movement is not getting you anything.
Yeah, that's
It,
true. It's all and it really takes away a big part of the field where you can throw to, obviously,
mhm.
and it doesn't matter that Dobbins, for instance, on this was on the third and six play, I guess it was, right before they had to kick the field goal at the end. Dobbins was right down by the goal line, and he was the
Yeah,
only guy who was
yeah.
breaking free of his coverage. But he's 50
Yeah,
yards
yeah,
away,
right,
all
upside the
the way to
field.
the side
Yeah,
of it.
no, I do remember that because I said, let me look backside to see what was going on backside, and sure enough, yeah, he was sitting there. Yep.
By the way, just to talk about that play since we're on it for a second,
Mhm.
I did not think that they gave Lamar the proper instruction prior to that play, or maybe it's just Lamar is not considering the game situation the way he should. But that was a play where the Ravens had all the time in the world to run that play, and unusual, they could afford to take a sack, and a pretty bad sack.
Mhm.
So they could have gotten sacked all the way back to, say, the 25-yard line, set up a 43-yard field goal for Tucker to tie the game. That's really not that much. That brings it down to 95% from 99% probably
Right.
if they kick it shorter. But I thought he had a chance to score had he reversed his field and beaten Landry. So Landry was the only guy who was trying anymore. Everybody else completely out of juice. There
Mhm.
was a purple picket fence of potential blockers. Now, they're not typically allowed to block. It'd be a crackback, but they can stay high and kind of obstruct the
Yeah, getting
players.
away, sure.
Yeah, and that would have given him a chance to go back to that other side of the field where there were only three defenders, and there was a one safety who wasn't exactly a spy, but it was the only guy who was in the middle of the field, and he would have had to track him down. I just think there's not a good chance that very high probability of a first down and then a timeout, or even a pretty good chance of a touchdown occurring. Might have been 25%, 30% for a touchdown had he
Mhm.
reversed his field and beaten Landry, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, I did see that opportunity. Yeah, because again, I was looking backside for receivers, and then I realized, well, hell, if he reverses his field, and yeah, he gets outside, he gets leverage on Landry. And who knows, right? You reverse your field, maybe Landry slips, and it's a lot easier than even as we're talking through it now. Then he's got a beeline on the goal line with that one kind of off safety to beat. But yeah, no, I agree. I think he also is reluctant. Lamar is to roll left
Hmm.
for obvious reasons. But I think at some point in time, and it won't happen in season, right? So it would have to happen off season if it happens at all. And it could be any off season, but obviously the sooner the better. Um, he watches enough film and he sees what he's being given by the defense, right? Because he has to be sick of looking at game film on Mondays and Tuesdays and seeing what's being taken away from him, right? He's got to be sick of that.
I would think
So,
so.
so he needs to start looking for what. Okay, what are they giving me? And oh, by the way, it would be helpful if his offensive coordinator was in the same mindset, and perhaps he is. But I'm not so sure we're seeing the results of that
Right.
if he indeed is.
Well, one of the things that would have been interesting is you had three covering three exactly from the goalposts all the way to the left. I mean, from the right goalpost all the way to the left.
Mhm.
If he runs to that matchup and that other mid-range safety, Kalu, I think was the guy's name, doesn't get into position to make the tackle, one of those three is going to have to ditch his man and move up and just take a chance because Jackson otherwise will score on his own.
Right.
When that happens, Jackson has shown good ability to improvise into a throw. He did it on a Boyle touchdown at Buffalo last year, a Boyle touchdown, I think earlier this year, where he kind of shoveled the ball. But
Yeah, that's
anyways,
the play I was thinking about this year. Can't remember the opponent, but yes.
anyway, lots of good opportunity to do that. Sorry that opportunity was missed because that let the game go to overtime there. Let's go back to some of the other Lamar throws that were deep, though. The ball that was too late in the end zone, Q2 650, this was the one for Brown. Got to get that ball out earlier,
Absolutely.
obviously. And, with Brown, I don't know why they can't do it. Brown was behind the defense that time, but you just got to throw to an open spot in the field and throw it early. Let him run under it. Exactly.
I completely agree. No, I completely agree. It's to me, it's as if, and I'm not saying this is true. This is just how I process information when I'm seeing. It's almost as if Lamar has a depth perception problem. Like he cannot distinguish whether a receiver running directly away from him, right? Not on a normal post, but like a skinny post or a go or a fly. He cannot distinguish if that receiver has a half step separation or 2 steps separation. Because the ball is coming out late, just way too often, or he's overthrowing. He's seldom underthrowing. We saw that once to Marquise Brown against Kansas City down the right side, and we saw this against Tennessee to Duvernay, which was just a puzzling throw altogether. But I don't know how else to explain what I'm seeing. And again, I'm not saying he has a depth perception problem. I have no idea. But that's just how, someone with a depth perception problem will be throwing deep balls, just like Lamar is right now.
Interesting notion. The really perfect throw went to Andrews. There's something about that throw that I really liked, but Hollywood Brown is not probably going to like it. Brown and Andrews ran complementary routes, and what I mean when I say that is that the deep safety had to make a choice between covering Andrews to the outside and covering Brown, and he chose Brown. And in so doing, he made it very easy to make a pitch and catch throw to Andrews, and both otherwise had beaten their trailing coverage on the play. That's a great thing for Andrews and the ability for Jackson to read where that safety's going and make his throw accordingly. What it's bad for is it's going to be harder to scheme throws for Brown, because I was thinking one of the ways they do that is to basically run a complementary route with Andrews and have the safety peel off for Andrews.
Right, because that's honestly, that's who I would cover. Right. I mean, based upon history and the usage of each receiver, each pass catcher to date this season, 2020 seasons, that I would choose Andrews all the time over Brown.
Other teams may do that as we go on. A touchdown to Andrews, obviously just a perfect throw. The throw behind Duvernay, you kind of mentioned. The fact that it was behind him made him readjust. It was a little bit overthrown, but I still think Duvernay has to track that ball better and get back into and turn into a defender on the play. It's still frustrating to me.
Yeah, 100%. Duvernay, watched quite a bit of him in college. Can't really say I like the fit for him on the club. Love the speed. Obviously, loved his hands. The guy would catch anything. But he's also a very good deep ball tracker. He showed that time and time again at Texas. And so I was, more surprised than probably anybody, that I speak to about Ravens games, that he completely misjudged that ball. And he stopped early, and I don't know if he just lost it, in the hazy sky or something. But
before we get started, if growing an e-commerce business is your focus, you'll need a platform that's focused on growth. That's where Klaviyo comes in. Klaviyo is the ultimate e-commerce marketing platform for online brands of all kinds and all sizes. Whether you're just getting started or running a well-known brand, it gives you everything you need to send memorable branded emails, text messages, and more, so you can build strong relationships that keep your customers coming back. With flexible automations, powerful insights, and super precise targeting, Klaviyo is a faster way to turn great ideas into great customer experiences. That's why it's trusted by more than 40,000 brands like Living Proof, Huckberry, and 8 Sleep. In fact, on average, Klaviyo customers see a 41% increase in overall revenue within 5 months. Klaviyo scales with you, so you never have to switch. They support everything from garage startups to iconic billion-dollar brands. Want to learn more about how you can grow your brand with Klaviyo? Visit klaviyo.com/grow to get started with a free trial today. That's klaviyo.com/grow.
Yeah, I was really surprised how badly he misplayed that ball. It was actually, I thought it was a good pass.
It
To be
was
honest with
a
you.
switch of shoulders, so it was on the other side of him. Andrews had a switch of shoulders on his touchdown
He
pass, so
did.
you can do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a little bit unfortunate. I would think Duvernay as a return man, and I don't know what kind of punt return he's done, but this applies in a lesser way to kickoffs where you have to run to a spot and then be ready to explode into the
Hmm.
return. I
Right.
would have thought he'd be in a better position to kind of make that play.
Yeah, and another note too. I think that was another late throw by Lamar. Not grossly late, but he he saw it long before, not long before, but in football time,
Hmm.
he saw it long before he threw it.
All right. All right, and then of course one of the really costly misses in the game, obviously being called short on the spot for Lamar's run, being inches short, then having Andrews' false start make it a 3rd and 5 instead of a 3rd and inches. Then had a ball downfield that Andrews is wide open, but the
Hmm.
ball just is slightly behind him. A catch Andrews probably could have made and made it look spectacular,
Right.
but it's really a bad throw by Lamar, is what it really comes down to.
Yeah. No doubt about that. Yep. He needed a better throw there, but I tell you, that false start just, it still drives me crazy.
Yep.
It try You are on the end of the line of scrimmage on a sneak play, and you are hell bent on getting to the second level.
Just hold your water.
I
That's
mean,
all you got to
what
do.
what was he thinking?
You,
If they get that, because they're going to get it,
mhm.
let's just say, right? And who knows, Harbaugh might go for it on 4th down, but they get that, they probably take off at least another 2 minutes off the clock. I think Tennessee got the ball with
7:43.
5:28, 7:43. Okay, yeah. So it takes it down to now 5:43, right? Thereabouts, at least. And they probably burn a timeout during the transition before the punt,
Yeah.
possibly, right? So now they're down to 2 timeouts, I believe, is what they would have had left. At least 2 minutes less time to work with on their final drive. It's just, we see it every game. It's just these little things that become, their impact is so great on the game. And this team, they weren't doing that last year. And when they were doing it last year, they were able to recover,
Yeah.
either
Mostly
on a
because
drive or put the ball in the end zone.
they were pummeling the opponents so
Right.
badly that they really couldn't keep up with them scoring wise anyway.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
all right. I thought Lamar did look good with Max Protect. I hope they go with more of that. I love the notion of getting the 2 or 3 Lamar receivers that Lamar will actually look at into the pattern, particularly when the opponent is playing, some zone schemes where the defense isn't really collapsing because of Lamar himself often.
Hmm.
That you have a better opportunity to still get a one-on-one matchup even though you've only got 3 receivers in the pattern. It's not like you're going to automatically get double coverage or whatever, or you're not going
I
to have your
got you.
safety collapse on that. I like that, and I thought I hope they do more of that. And I think the trickle out notion really fits well with who Lamar is as a quarterback, and getting a receiver out at 3.5 seconds, say, to be a secondary alternative on those plays. It may even take a spy away from Lamar in that sort of situation if you
That's a
trickle a
good
guy
point.
out late.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point.
All right. I think we talked about the 3rd down play at the end. That's all I really have to say about Lamar. Any other points you would make about Lamar from this game?
From this game particularly, I think it is good compared to last year's game. Obviously, the scoreboard was different, and the circumstances were much different. But I never saw him rattle this game. You know, um, at all. And obviously, it's again, it's a little bit different when you have the lead. But when that lead evaporated, they they had the chance to win the game, right? And
Hmm.
this would have been his comeback, fourth quarter game-winning drive, that people say, the kid can't execute, but that's all they did was execute on that drive. It just, got down to the early snap, and then that, throws things off. A couple of questionable play calls, quite frankly, from the OC. And it didn't happen. But nine plays. I think it was 65 yards, and then only took maybe two minutes or something.
Yeah, it
You
was. I
know,
think it was less than that because they didn't. Oh, well, maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't remember how much exact time they had left.
actually, I got a note
But
here somewhere. Yeah,
yeah,
nine 65 203. Yeah, 9 plays, 65
there you
yards,
go.
2 minutes 3 seconds, 6 passes. Right, one
Hmm.
run, only one run and one scramble. So it would have been the seventh pass. He scrambled on that one. That was early in the drive. I think picked up about 14 yards. So I mean, he played well, I thought. And again, he didn't seem rattled, and he was in control of the ball game that last drive. So that's a positive for him. I mean, obviously he would like to have the interception back and the miscues on, particularly with Andrews in the late one to Hollywood, but yeah. So I think he has not played his best football in the previous contest, but he bounced back well in this one.
Yeah,
And I don't really even fault him that much in the New England game, for God's sakes, with that weather. But
terrible weather.
yeah, but I know a lot of people wanted to ignore that and kind of just hammer the kid. But um, he's okay. He's all right. This game is obviously going to tell a lot on Thursday. Be nice to know that they're going to have a fighting chance with being well staffed, I guess, because we don't have any names, right, from COVID yet. We don't. Do
No,
we know
we'll
names?
we'll hear tomorrow. I want
Yeah,
to go back about one point about Lamar here because I think this is important.
sure.
What we've always seen from Lamar is outstanding drives at the end of the half when it's freestyle, four receiver, one back, or even 4-10, where you have a tight end in there. We see these great drives consistently to make use of a limited clock at the end of the half. And he did that again at the end of the game. And I'm wondering, we saw some of it in the Colts game in the second half.
Absolutely.
Can't they turn the light switch on and off just occasionally and say, let's have a drive like that? The defense hasn't played too many snaps maybe in this game, or they haven't played too many snaps in a row. We can afford to, lose the ball in 3 plays if it happens. But if we have one of these back-breaking, punch it down the field drives,
Right.
as Lamar's been wont to do, I mean, this might be a weapon. Lamar's not really a traditional no huddle guy that really likes to call it out the line of scrimmage. So I think you need to have maybe a set of scripted plays or a set of 5 plays you're ready to
Hmm.
run under
Hmm.
those circumstances. But it seems like that'd be effective.
No, I think you're right. And pace works for him. It works for the unit.
Hmm.
Yeah, you mentioned the Colts game. I mean, that first drive in the third quarter, I think they went. I know they went 3 passes. I can't remember. They went 4 passes. Open up that drive. Open up the second half. The drive ended in a rare fumble, rare two from Gus.
Hmm.
But I mean, they moved the ball, and the Colts didn't know what was going on. I mean, Snead had a couple of catches. Boyle got matched up, I believe, against a edge rusher.
Huh.
That's how surprised the Colts were that the Ravens were looking to pass for the fourth play in a row, or at least 3 out of 4 plays. Boyle got, edge rusher, gave him a simple move, and got down into the red zone. So it works. Running the ball on first down all the time. Well, not all the time. It wouldn't be fair, but almost all the time.
Hmm.
That is not fooling anybody. That's not fooling anybody.
Well, they also, when in so doing, Dobbins' strengths as a runner are different from Edwards and Ingram. And last year, they ran a lot more out of the pistol, a much higher percentage of snaps. And
Hmm.
that gives you a much better read opportunity for Lamar and much better play action opportunities. The linebackers bite much more on that power read. And it's something that is really missing, I think, from the offense. But if you go back to having one back in the backfield, and you can put him in the pistol, sometimes you can put him sidecar other times. But when he is in the pistol, you're going to have a really good play action opportunity. You can take you can take advantage of every down, like the Titans did on offense in this game.
Correct. Yeah. How about that? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I really hope to see more of that. I think it's proven that it's effective. Um, and I don't know. I don't know what's standing in the way of that, other than perhaps some stubbornness.
We talked a little bit about some various scheme issues otherwise in this game, but I want to talk about Des Bryant a little bit in this game too. I mean, obviously people love the fact that he caught 4 passes and made a big play in this game.
Sure.
I want to remind people that he had 5 targets for 28 yards. His first target was the only one that was, I think, past the line of scrimmage, or certainly past the line of scrimmage by more than about a yard. And that one he dropped, even though there was a holding call also on the play.
Right. Yeah, that drop. I think his back was to the camera, so I couldn't really like dissect that drop too much. It looked like he almost double caught it, and then may have kicked it out of his own hand, like with his thigh or something as he was kind of going forward there. But yeah, I'll take whatever I can get from Des Bryant. I don't think he's the he's the man beater that he once was. I think he's going to give you effort. Certainly seems like he's happy to have a job, and he's happy to be on a winning team. And he probably likes the unit that is with the guys in the wide receiver room. But yeah, I'm just going to take him. Take it as it comes, man. He could still probably win a slant against tight coverage. He could probably do a swipe and kind of get a good comeback in there and whatnot. But he's not going to suddenly put up 80-yard games on 6 catches or whatever from here on out. You just have to kind of take what you can get with him.
Well, if it was supplemental, I'd be all for that. My problem is that we're down to 23% Boykin snaps and 20% Duvernay snaps. And Boykin, you can love him or hate him as a receiver, but he does give you a threat, and he gives you some outstanding top shelf blocking, probably the best of just about any receiver in the National Football League.
No doubt about that.
And Duvernay gives you a dangerous guy who can create big plays. If Bryant is going to be a guy who's 5.6 yards per target, I'm just not that excited, and I don't like it better than the other alternatives. As much as
you put it that way, it causes me to think. Put myself in Roman's shoes, and then I want to say or ask the question why. What if you're gonna put throw a change up? I don't know if that's the pitch you really want. I get that. Okay, you can't having Bryant and Boykin on the field at the same time is probably not ideal either. But generally, to date, you're not getting the ball into Duvernay's hands enough, in my opinion, anyway. Right? So that makes sense. I think that's flawed, but at least that makes sense. So Dez being out there, based upon the games that have been called to date, makes sense. It follows that same logic. I just think it's flawed thinking, generally. If I'm making any sense right now.
Okay, so I'm not understanding which side of this you're coming down on. Are you coming down on you'd rather see Boykin and Duvernay snaps than Bryant snaps, or are you coming down on you're real happy to see Bryant get the amount of play time that he did?
I would rather see Duvernay snaps over either Boykin or Bryant.
Okay. All right, well, fair enough.
If we're talking straight passing game, right? Straight effectiveness and optimization of the passing game, that I want Duvernay out there.
Okay, and I would agree. He gives you the most in the passing game, and Boykin gives you a lot more in the run game.
Absolutely.
I guess I'm saying I see an optimization that's easier to make with a combination of those two players than including Bryant, who gives you less than one as a receiver and less than the other as a blocker. And I don't know who Dez is as a blocker at this point. I really haven't seen much from him. I know he's not any different so far than what I expected as a receiver. He was like this his last 3 years at Dallas, a little bit more productive, but I'd expect him, given that he's 4 years older than the average of those last 3 years at Dallas,
sure,
that he would be not as good.
No, absolutely. And I can't honestly cannot remember. Was he ever an above average blocker?
No,
Other than just using his size and length.
I could look it up on PFF, but honestly, I really don't know.
Yeah. But
So
I don't think he was certainly, I don't recall him being praised for his blocking. Yeah, certainly I do not remember that. But yeah, look, I mean Boykin, I like him. I love what he brings to the table, as you called out in the run game, obviously. But it's just it's so just frustrating to see um, the miscues that he has had with Lamar earlier in the season, and just it, he will struggle to gain separation because of his physical nature and particularly his stride length. With a stride length like his, there is no hesitation, there is no pace, there is no burst. It's all build up,
mhm.
right? He is 100% build up. And it's hard to win in the NFL if all you have is one gear, no matter what size,
So you want
right?
shorter steps and higher frequency is what you want in a great NFL receiver. That's
A-
what Antonio
yeah,
Brown maybe gives you.
yeah, absolutely. And even receivers his size or even bigger. Mike Evans has an inch on Boykin. He has quicker turnover.
Hmm.
And if you look at, I tell you what, you look at, I don't know if you watch any college film at all, but I almost said Matthews. I don't think that's his last name. I'm drawing a blank right now. Marshall, excuse me, Terrace Marshall at LSU.
Hmm.
He's listed at 6'3". He might be 6'2" and a half. But watch him run, and I'm almost 100% positive that he's been trained to shorten his stride.
Hmm.
His turnover is pretty quick, but it looks so unnatural. Like he's still kind of getting used to it, but it's
Right.
very effective. And yeah, but if you just have that one just long, elongated stride, man, you're so easy to read. They they
That's
they see your breaks coming two strides away because you have to be able to throttle down fast with shorter steps and come out of your break the same way to be effective. And he just can't. He physically can't do that right now.
that's a truly excellent explanation of that, AC. And one of the things I've been saying about Boykin is that he needs to have, like Brown, also really another saleable route. And basically, I'm thinking comeback route for the back shoulder throw versus go deep on any sort of vertical, whether it's post, sluggo, whatever it might be.
Hmm.
He needs to have that second route to complement that, which forces that defensive back to be honest. And if his stride length isn't forcing any sort of honesty out of the defensive back, then obviously would be a very big key as to why he's been effective. But great explanation there.
Yeah, and I think the result of that ultimately, not it sounds like I was hammering on Boykin there, but I liked him. I liked the pick. I had him actually ranked in. I had him placed in the third round. On my little armchair GM board for the draft. But what it does, the effect of that is you're keying on Andrews for whatever reason, and we can talk about this later. Hollywood's giving you nothing, and you don't have to worry about Boykin. Man, the Ravens are very, very easy to
Mm-hmm.
defend.
Yeah, they would need to find some other way to get a weapon out there, and I'm not convinced Bryant is that guy. Even if every other team said we're putting on a mile island and it's a smoke route and you can have 4 or 5 yards most of the time, I
Right.
still don't think it's really worth it.
No, yeah, no, I agree with you there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there. He's not the answer. He's a stopgap. I think the fact that he's here um, kind of tells you what the staff thinks about the unit as a whole, which is
Right.
unfortunate.
Well, hopefully they'll get that guy that they need in the draft next year. Let's turn it over right now. Talk about a couple players each. You pick a guy you liked in the game, or maybe you had something to say about, and we'll each kind of make a point. We'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, sure. Again, I come back to Jacalen. I'm just really high on him. I was a little lukewarm about the pick. Love the player. Has always I've always loved the player. Um, the pick though, I thought it was a little bit early. And I think when you get a player like that, boy, do you really have to use him in all aspects of the game. Obviously, the one aspect that you want to see him secure is that pass blocking role, so you can keep him out there for three
Oh
downs.
yeah.
And like we talked about earlier, he seems to have that down. He did have the one big miss against Tennessee, but he has consistently, which is the important thing, been a very good pass blocker at running back. And I hope in the future, whether under this OC or another, he is utilized, to the max, because I think he can certainly be a Camara type player out there for as long as his body will hold up.
Yeah, that is really the question with a second round draft pick. I hope the Ravens are smart about it, and it's you hate to limit a guy's career, but I think he's probably a one contract back given the workload he had at Ohio State, and he'll hopefully the Ravens just will use their normal organizational judgment and say we can save money at running back and draft the next guy as opposed
Hmm.
to spending a lot of money. But they've been so successful at finding these fringe guys who end up being good players like Edwards and Collins and Forsett and
Right,
all these guys the last
right.
few years who worked well with the offensive line coaching they've had.
Yeah, and that's exactly what gave me pause about the pick,
Hmm.
not the player, but the pick. Second round. It's like this team finds running backs all over the place. They must really, really like this guy more than I even do. So
It's something about when DaCosta makes a pick that goes against the normal organizational philosophy of not drafting a running back high, for example. I think, okay, boy, that's not need.
hmm,
That's a real value pick he's getting there. So I almost like the pick more in that situation. Honestly speaking, I did not like all the draft capital spent inside linebacker this draft. I did not like it at all. I think you can
yeah.
do much better with platooning.
No, yeah, I know that is definitely your philosophy that I agree with it more than I used to be honest with you.
After
And
Queens.
yeah, yeah, over time, you don't have me 100% sold yet, but I do see a lot more of your point than I used to. And talking about second contracts, how good does that guy have to be, to earn, a top five contract?
At running back or at
I'm
inside
sorry,
linebacker?
at linebacker,
Hmm.
right? I mean, if Mosley was good, right?
He was great. And,
Yeah,
and honestly, I'd have been scared to death if the Ravens paid him what the Jets did.
absolutely.
My immediate response is, okay, yeah, I'm glad we didn't pay it.
Yeah,
Because
me too.
if they had, what it does is puts you in a terrible injury bind because you can't replace that unicorn. You can if you have individual platoon players who each contribute something and they're 80% of that overall great player, you pay a
Hmm.
lot less for that,
Hmm.
and then they're very replaceable. I mean, replacing your dime back, they're not doing it this year. I mean, they haven't successfully done it, but it's easy as hell normally to
Right.
find an additional
Yeah.
safety who's a better cover guy than your second
Hmm.
best linebacker.
Hmm. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
All right, let's move on here. I'll pick another player. I was a little bit surprised that Ricard only played 23 snaps in this game. Even with Boyle gone, I thought, maybe they'll use him a little bit more. I was happy to see that they used him for a reception, and he looked pretty good with the football. Well, as good as he can with the
Yeah.
football after he caught the ball.
Yeah. I've been a little vocal about Ricard the last few games. To the point where I was calling, those swing passes to him, just like, a, a wasted down,
Hmm.
quite frankly. Not because anything to do with, I mean, we know his skills and his skill set, and we know what he brings to the table, but he's so easily keyed on in those situations. His motion will often take you, to the ball, or at least tell you where the ball is going. And same thing with when he gets a pass, right? It's not like he's not sneaking out the backside; he's coming to the front side. So it's a 2 yarder. It's like, what are we doing? We need to be pushing the ball downfield. So when he's on the field, I'm like, okay, let's pick up our 3-4 yards, off the edge or something, in the running game. But yeah, let's not. We don't need to throw him the ball at all. I'm not sure that's moving the needle on win probability.
All right. Well, he's had 4 touchdowns career receiving, but he's a 3.8 yard per target guy. Not completely fair to a guy who gets so many red zone receptions to judge him by yards per target.
Right. True. True.
The point I want to make is that's not that much below what we got out of Des Bryant in the schedule. So let's just bring it back here. Anybody else you want to mention?
Marlon Humphrey.
Okay, Marlon Humphrey defender, so we can't do it on this show.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Sorry about that.
I was gonna sneak it in there. Just something. I know you'll edit this out. Something to tuck away. Is he okay? Is he fully recovered? Do you think?
I wouldn't know how to judge that, and I
I
wouldn't
wouldn't
presume to
either.
do it.
But guy, he does not look like the same player.
All
He
right, well,
really
fair enough.
doesn't.
And I won't edit that out. I'll name one more player though. I thought that Luke Wilson had a pretty good game. It's only 11 snaps. They almost all used him as a blocker, but he picked up some of that blocking responsibility, and I think he'll become more of a play action threat for the Ravens. He can catch the football. He'll be a player I think who can help the Ravens down the stretch, and I expect him to be one of the guys who gets permanently elevated once they get through all this mess of weeks of available COVID call-ups and
Right.
practice squads call-ups.
Yeah. I think they have to fill that void, and obviously, yeah, you cannot expect him to give you what Boyle gave you. I'm pretty sure no one expects that, at the castle there, but they certainly really need another presence in the passing game, out of the sets that they like to run. So yeah, yeah, it'd be again another guy who obviously wasn't even on the team when the season started. Um, and that in a vacuum you don't think much of, but a guy like this, you want to see him get in the game and just produce, right? And he doesn't have to uh, be catching Hail Marys at the final whistle or things like that. But you just want to see a guy like this perform and produce and and do well. So yeah, we'll see what he's got here.
Okay, we got an interesting question here in the mailbag I want to try and address here because I think I got the right guy to try and address this.
Uh-oh. Okay.
But here it is. Are there any particular philosophies or concepts you'd like to see integrated into the offense or defense this offseason via coaching hire? So an additional offensive assistant or even an OC, such as the Oklahoma Lincoln Riley system?
So I'll answer the last part first. I'm not particularly, um, I guess, tied to any system out there. I've watched the Oklahoma system probably more than any other, and that was probably solely because coming into 2019, and you read the same articles I did about kind of like the tour, I guess that Roman and perhaps even Urban and others were taking, and I think Harbaugh too, and is trying to learn from different systems. I know they talked to
Hmm.
a guy who I'll always love, Paul Johnson, talked to him quite a bit, and others, and it's trying to borrow different portions of different schemes out there. So I really don't know what actual scheme I would favor. Generally, I do want more versatility. I would love to see some option routes. I would love to see a more aggressive uh, play calling on first down. So quite simply, more passing on first down. So obviously, how do we get there from here? Well, I'm also talking about moving away from run heavy, run first offense. I think they have the receivers to do that. They need more, right? They do need that man beater, a
Hmm.
guy like Allen Robinson who may be on the market, or one of my favorites right now in college football is Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the three, I believe, St. Brown brothers. He's at USC. His older brother is I believe he's still at Green Bay, but now on the IR. But guys like that who can just beat you one on one, with their feet, their little shoulder fake, head fake, their eyes, great extension, great radius that can make that tough catch. So I want to see an offense. They don't need to be slinging it, 60% or 65% of the time, but they have so much speed. I don't know if there's two teams faster than the Ravens on offense.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you the Chiefs, but that may be a close race. It might be a close relay race.
Well, the
I don't
Ravens
know.
don't use all their speed, that's for
Not at
sure.
all.
Justice Hill isn't there.
Oh my goodness.
Boykin, you mentioned, is a long strider, so that negates some of that value. And whatever Hollywood is doing right now, or the fact that the defenses are gravitationally pulling towards him, that may be negating some of his speed as well.
True. And Duvernay, I believe, is a state champion.
Oh yeah.
Track guy. Out of probably the fastest state in the union, year in, year out, which is Texas. So yeah, they're not using their speed at all, and I think you really have to do that. If you don't, I just don't know what you're doing.
Well, I think
go ahead.
Two things I want to see out of the offense. The one, and we've talked about both of them on the show. One is more max protect to create extended plays that are more efficient. So you keep two guys in, you dribble one out at 3.5 seconds, and you get a better short receiving opportunity or a better run opportunity for Lamar. The second one is I want the light switch off and on to go to this no huddle version of the offense occasionally, where they can just kind of go very fast paced play action most plays, and drill the way we saw against the Colts.
Right, yeah, because it's exhausting on your defense if you live there all the time, right? Because they're getting back on the field a lot sooner than they probably would like. So you can't do it all the time, absolutely. But yeah, again, and we've seen it, right? We've seen well executed end of half, end of game drives. We've seen, I believe it was 3 drives in the second half of the Colts game. That were incredibly well executed, and even overcame a couple of penalties in those drives too. But then you get to the red zone and you go run into a loaded box. It's like, come on, But so certainly more consistency around that. But I think together, what we've called out here, that's the kind of scheme and approach I would love to see in 2021.
All right, Acie, pleasure having you on, buddy. This is some really good discussion. I love some of the things you've told me about Miles Boykin long striding it. It's certainly something I have to look for when I look at receivers going forward. But you always learn something from somebody who really follows the game the way you do, charts a lot of football, and has the kind of knowledge of college football you do. Really appreciate you coming on, buddy.
Well, thank you so much, Ken. I've always been a fan of yours. I don't listen as often as I probably should to your podcast, to be honest, but I read everything that you write, and I'm very much appreciative of what you put out there in the public domain, so that people like myself, can learn and stay abreast. And so thank you for doing what you're doing, and thanks for inviting me on. It's been a great pleasure.
My pleasure as well, Acie. Tell us where people can find you on Twitter, or where people can contact you.
Oh, absolutely. I'm at Big Play Receiver on Twitter, all one string, no underscores or anything. Big Play Receiver, and that's where I live pretty much all the time, talking football.
All right, definitely a very worthwhile follow, and I'll make sure to include it in the promo for this show. But give him a follow while you can. Some good visualizations we have coming up anytime soon, Acie.
I'm going to get back to that on the other side of Christmas. Promise you.
All right, very good. I'm looking forward to that, buddy. I want to tell you what's coming up here on Filmstudy Baltimore in the next couple of days. We've got a very condensed week, so the Know Your Foe episode is already out there as you're looking at this on Wednesday afternoon. The By the Numbers is already out there. This is actually the last podcast of the week, and we talked a little bit about the offensive line scoring. That'll be out a little bit later in the day if you're listening to this on Wednesday. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.